So, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 0 of our podcast. We're going to call it episode 0. This is sort of the prologue episode before we definitely get things kicked off. My name is Ryan, and today I'm joined by my co host, Spencer.
Yeah, hello everyone. We're working on this as part of our graduating project, and this is sort of a trial episode to see how things go. So, if it does work out, you might see this uploaded somewhere, but likely not. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, I think the best way to get things kicked off is to introduce ourselves, so I'll go first. So my name's Ryan, as you heard before. I'm 21 years old. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Arts course with Victoria University. I'm in my third year. I major in digital media and minor in visual arts. I take a great interest into things like writing, of course, digital media, so that contain things like photography, video editing, graphic design, things like that. And naturally, that would pertain an interest in social media as well, which we'll get into later. Um, and Spencer, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Spencer, and like Ryan, I'm doing the same course, a Bachelor of Arts, but I'm majoring in political science instead, minoring in sociology and history. Um, Besides that, I have an interest in music and film, and I like to sort of learn about that as well. But yeah, naturally, with my degree, learning about sort of activism is very important and very like relevant to my degree. So it's a good area of study for me to have.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we wanted to create this podcast as part of our graduating project 2 class with Victoria University in 2021. Um, So the entire point of this unit is to, of course, make a project digitally, with digital media using what tools we have available to us, whether that be, software, equipment, computers, things like that. And Spencer and I have both decided to work on, well, the base part of our project is a research paper. Um, and we decided to take the opportunity when making this paper to uh, create a platform for spreading a message, making awareness of something. And what we decided to make awareness of is digital activism, and maybe start some discussion as to whether it works or whether it doesn't. And I think the way we're going to go about that is looking at several cases where digital activism has taken sort of the driving force as to making a real world change. So we decided to do a paper on that as the uh, of course, base part of the project. And this podcast is a sort of another opportunity for us to express some of our concerns about digital activism, as well as some of our, other presupposed feelings of digital activism in a more casual, conversational tone. And I think it's just always a good idea to, if you are going to say something on social media, the best way you can do that is to say it in as many ways as you can. So if you're going to have a paper, maybe having something else like a podcast as well to complement it might be a good idea.
Yeah, exactly that. The we'll also have probably the research paper uploaded for anyone to view, but this is sort of meant to be like a more informal means of discussing that sort of paper and what we've uncovered in our research. So um, anyone can probably feel free to sort of scroll through that paper and come to their own conclusions and discuss it with anyone they please, or like discuss it, like just analyze it on their own. But this is kind of our way of analyzing it and discussing it together. And yeah, that's our way of doing it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a lot of resources for our viewers to look over. We're going to include all of our references and whatnot once the paper is published. We haven't started on it yet, but we both do have a very good idea of what it will look like. So I'm definitely looking forward to start work on that with Spencer, and get that out there for the world to see. And just to touch on that, I think it's very sort of ironic, but almost beautiful, like poetic, that we are talking about digital activism while being digitally active ourselves. I think that's a really special thing, and it's a it's not something to take granted for. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be digitally active and have a voice somewhere. Um,
And especially in the times we're in with the whole pandemic and coronavirus situation, it's like
yeah,
everything has been moved online. So it's like digital activism is really relevant to learn about right now, and it's very relevant to talk about. So it's it's kind of like we're in the I don't want to say ideal situation because obviously this whole thing isn't ideal, but in terms of looking at digital activism, it's more relevant than ever.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It's with the whole stay-at-home nonsense going on. Digital activism has definitely stepped up to the plate in terms of how prevalent it's been, and because I believe for many years, digital activism has mostly been it sort of had most of its interest sort of taken by the youth, understandably. But now with encouragement from organizations and governments to stay home and work from home, lots of people, young and old, are being forced to act digitally, whether they are conscious of that or not. So that's pretty interesting, and I think we can maybe talk about that consideration in a future episode.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so I think we should move on now to talking about why we are interested in digital activism. So personally, of course, as I said before, I'm very interested in digital media. I love making pictures, I love taking pictures and distributing pictures. So obviously, the best way to do that is to be interactive on social media, build a following, interact with other artists, other designers. Of course, I spend a lot of time on websites like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are my main three. Um, Sometimes it's productive. You meet people that you never would have met otherwise. Sometimes you get your work out there, you get some good feedback, and you generally you get connected with communities that are interested in the same things as you. And then other times it's not so productive. You just sit there looking at 6-second videos for the next hour or so, and you get nothing done. But Spencer, what really drives your interest into digital activism, and why do you think it's something that we should talk about?
Yeah, well, in general, I'm quite interested in activism and especially how one can effectively sort of promote change and like what are the best ways to do it. And so when you discuss the topic of digital activism, a lot of people like sort of just write it off as like being like ineffective, and it's
Yeah.
just a lazy form of activism even. But in a world where much of our communication is done online, or even most of it is done online, it's pretty much it's going, or if it isn't now, it's going to become the most predominant form of activism. So understanding it is very beneficial, I think, and it would be good to find out if it does work, which sort of in the brief research we've done, we have found that mostly it has a positive effect. And
Right.
if that is true, what is the best way of taking advantage of digital activism in promoting change? I think it'd be very helpful for anyone with activist goals or any idea of promoting change, like someone like that. It would be good for them to understand it and know how to take advantage of it to benefit their cause.
Yeah, for sure. And just to go back to what you said about, the whole thing about lazy activism as well, slacktivism is a very popular term that people like to associate digital activism with. And I think we both believe that slacktivism is a real problem, but the extent of its prevalence is often extruded when people bring up digital activism. There's a lot of unfamiliarity that people have with digital activism and exactly when it's applied, when it's good and when it's bad. So I hope when we look at some of the cases that we've sort of, done research on in the past, we can maybe clear up some misconceptions or maybe give someone a more satisfying conclusion to their sort of feelings on digital activism.
Yeah,
Uh,
and for sure, slacktivism is definitely like a real like thing. Like people often use digital activism as a means of like, saying they've done something but not actually putting in that much effort to do
yes,
something.
yes.
But there is also a lot of potential for people to really like promote change and put in the effort if they do online into actually affecting that change.
Yeah, digital activism can be a powerful tool if you know how to use it. It's like the hammer. If you drive it in the wrong way, it's not going to work and it's not going to look pretty. Um, See, I guess that sort of segues nicely into the next point, talking about some of our presupposed feelings of digital activism. Of course, personally, I've seen a lot of slacktivism in my social circles, both with people I've met in real life and people I've met online. People who, as Spencer said, like to pretend they're doing something good, when in reality, they're not making the most out of what they're posting. There's lots of examples of this. There's people who will uh, essentially they don't practice what they preach. They'll make a post, dog whistling something, and then you look at their past history on their feelings of that subject, and think, well, that's just a direct contradiction, and you're just saying this for attention, um, and not trying to drive real change. It's a kind of disingenuous sort of platforming that I think is a big part of Selectivism. I've seen that with my own friends. I've seen that especially with celebrities and influencers as well. And influencers are going to be a huge, I think, well, not a huge but significant part of our discussion going forward with this project. So, what kind of posts have you seen, Spencer? What kind of pieces of Slacktivism or digital activism have you seen before taking on this project?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always had the idea that digital activism was mostly sort of like a feel-good activism, where it's like someone posts something to sort of get the attention for themselves without really like doing anything about it. Like
Right.
maybe you've seen like people post like a petition or something where it's
Mm,
like, oh yeah, just sign this petition and whatever happens. But while that might have some sort of minor effect, there are other ways to take social media on to really benefit like the cause that you're trying to promote. And we've learned about that in countries where in crisis situations they've used social media to communicate with each other and really like branch out and actually promote these change. I forget the thing I looked at, but it's all right. We'll have time to discuss it in future episodes. But yeah, people. There's been instances where people have really gotten together through social media to actually in person demonstrate and that sort of stuff wouldn't have happened without the presence of digital activism and digital communication.
yeah, I completely agree with you there. There's definitely been a pattern with all the cases and articles we've looked at where digital activism seems to be strongest when it's paired in hybrid, sort of a hybrid format with, real world activism, which you'll hear that term a lot. Real world activism is just a nice way for us to separate the two because there's some big differences. But when they do work in harmony, I think they do generally work well. Um,
For sure.
yeah, sometimes things can get a bit extruded and not turn out the way that people expected, or people take the entire concept of slacktivism and they even apply that to real world activism as well. People going on riots and you know just destroying businesses and stuff and saying it's for the sake of activism for justice. And I don't know, I feel like that's not a very productive way of going about things. I feel like again that's just another case of people making excuses. But of course, I don't want to put my raw opinions too much into this. And if we want to talk about those considerations later, we definitely will. So let's move on to. Again, this segues nicely to our next point. What a coincidence. We'll talk about what we might do for the podcast in future episodes and what's coming up for our viewers. So, Spencer, I might let you take this point away a little bit.
Okay, so for the rest of graduating project two, we're sort of analyzing the research we've done and sort of we've conducted further research in the form of a survey. And for the rest of the second graduating project, we'll be analyzing the results of that survey and analyzing the research and the conclusions we've come to. And we'll come to more of like an active opinion and conclusion on digital activism. So like we said, we'll have the actual research paper uploaded, but the podcast we plan to do is a informal discussion of that research paper. And for future episodes, we will cover different areas and we'll have episodes where we look at different areas of research and in different considerations we have about digital activism, and we'll see how that goes as we move on. But for right now, we're just sort of analyzing what we've done so far and talking about the considerations we have for the future.
Yeah, and just to clarify for our viewers, this graduating project class that we're doing with Victoria University has two parts. The first part, Spencer and I both completed in April of 2021, I believe, and that part of the class mostly consisted of planning, writing up a project proposal for our lecturer and our peers to review, and basically that proposal entailed all of our plans, exactly what we're going to do, what we're going to reference, some of the research we need to conduct, and exactly what kind of considerations and issues we need to think about. So we both did that class. We worked together for the entire 4 weeks, I believe, and we got some. I think we got pretty far there. And then, as of now, or as of the other day, we started graduate project 2, which is the hands-on stuff. Actually working on the bulk of the project. So that's why we're starting this podcast now. Um, yeah, I think graduate project is pretty interesting class. It's really interesting to see what people are coming up with. And of course, looking back on Graduate Project One, the first part, there's definitely a lot of resources we can go over. There's some really exciting stuff that we're planning to show you all in later episodes. Lots of data that we're going to review piece by piece. That'll probably be like a special episode at some point, and honestly, that's probably what I'm looking forward to most. And I want to bring this on to a question for you, Spencer. What are you looking forward most to in this project?
Um, Similar to you, I'm interested in sharing our personal findings and opinions, and sort of discussing that and seeing if we've come to sort of similar conclusions, or if we've actually got different opinions that we'd like to sort of debate or even discuss, and just hash it out and see what kind of conclusion we can come to collectively. That's sort of my area of interest in doing this podcast.
Cool, cool. All right, well, I think that covers just about everything we wanted to look at for this episode 0 edition of our podcast. If you'd like to listen, tune in, or watch us, you can probably find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify if they'll let us. Excuse me. And of course, we will be uploading pieces of our paper and our entire paper to a website, which will be announced in the future. We still have to discuss exactly what kind of formats that will be available in. We'll probably leave a link to a Google document with the entire report in just one slew, and we'll probably provide a single web page with the report sort of broken up into more manageable sections. But yeah, thank you all for listening, tuning in, and watching. I hope you enjoyed this trial episode of the podcast, if it ever sees the light of day. Spencer, is there anything you'd like to say before we close off?
Um, yeah, I'm really interested in trialing this format because it's something that I'm lacking experience in, and we're sort of both lacking experience in. So it's sort of interesting to do this because we're developing skills as we go, and it might not be the best presented sort of podcast right now, but hopefully it gets better as time goes on if we continue with this format. So that's just what I'd like to say.
Yeah, there's definitely some kinks to work out, but that's how things go when you try something for the first time. There's first time for everything. But
Exactly.
but again, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Spencer, for joining me today. And that's just about it. See you in the next episode. Bye bye, and take care.